right there, guys, is what you're about to learn, that guitar solo. And as you can hear, it is a full-on metal guitar solo, but we've also got some nice melodic pieces to that. You'll notice how there's some technical stuff going on in certain parts of the solo, but there are some room for melodies as well. So we're about to dig into this solo here, but real quick, my Patreon members, you guys have the tabs for this and also the backing tracks to play along with. And do hang around after the lesson because we're going to have our usual guitar chat. Let's start out by playing the solo out in the open here, and I'm going to break this thing down into 4 different sections. That's going to make it a lot easier to learn, and of course we're going to talk through each of the styles of lead playing that we're doing here. You'll recognize some of this stuff from some early music here, and it gets pretty interesting. So here's the solo. First lick of the solo is a really super easy lick, like super duper, and it might kind of bring you back to the 80s. You'll hear this strategy or these notes being played in a similar way in many of the 80s solos, both in some of maybe like the hair metal and even some of the pop and rock stuff in the 80s. So here it is. I didn't mean to get that little squeal there, but that sounded pretty cool, so we're leaving that in. So 3 notes. Let's just focus on the notes for now. We are on the B and E strings, so we're only playing on 2 strings, 3 notes. So we're going to go 12, 13 on the B string. Then we'll end on the 15th fret of the E string. So if you're just to play the notes with no frills, and we'll go over the frills here, but just here's the notes. Now the frills part, I like to slide sometimes when starting a solo. It doesn't really matter what I'm playing. I'll often just slide into it or do some kind of power slide or whatever. And of course I'm going to end with a little bit of whammy touch, and I'll share something else you can do if you don't have a whammy bar. So here's what I'm doing in the solo. Now a couple of things. I never start from the same place. I'm not actually playing a note when I start the slide. I'm just kind of throwing my hand up there somewhere, throwing my finger up there somewhere, and just sliding into that first note. Honestly, guys, I don't really pay too much attention to that type of stuff. I just kind of go by how I feel like playing it, you know. And sometimes, well, usually all the time is different. So I only say that to say this: please don't allow yourself to get so caught up into having to know every single little detail that a guitar player is doing. What I encourage you to do instead is to take the concept, okay, when we know we're sliding into that note, and find your own way of doing that. That is so much more powerful than like, well, I gotta know every single little thing, you know. You really don't, guys. You really don't. I always encourage you to develop your own style and sound. Now, we learn to do that by, of course, learning techniques and learning other solos and that sort of thing. But if you don't play it exactly like I play it or whatever solo that you're learning, really, who cares? Somebody else wrote it. It really doesn't matter to me. I mean, that's just my opinion. Learn the lick, but again, don't get so caught up in every little detail. Allow yourself to become your own guitar player and just develop your own style and sound. So we'll talk more about that at the end in our guitar chat, of course. Now, that last part, if you don't have a whammy bar, you could do something like this. Just add a little vibrato to that note. Or you could do something like what I just did. I just added something else to it. That wasn't part of the solo that I wrote for this little project here, but I just felt like doing something else, and that's the point. That's what I want you guys to get. It's okay to venture outside of what I'm showing you here. I want that for you. Now, this next part of the solo gets a little bit more complex. We're doing just a little sweep pick pattern here, and we've got some hammer-ons and pull-offs and that sort of thing. So let me see if I can pull this off, no pun intended. Alright, that was kind of fast, but we're going to slow this down a little bit. So the first part of that is just a very simple 3-note sweep picking pattern. A little arpeggio there. Extremely common, those last three strings there, frets 12, 13, 12. And then we're going to hammer down on that 15th fret, and I'm also going to tap the 17th fret, okay? Now, one of the little tricks that I do, number one, since I'm tapping, of course I've got my right hand, my picking hand, kind of far up here on the neck, because I don't want to be sweep picking down here and have to go way over there. I mean, some people do it. Some people play it that way. I'm not going to say that's wrong or right. It's just, it's really what's most comfortable to you and how you learn, what feels most natural to you. I strongly encourage that. But for me, if I'm going to be tapping with that picking hand, I like to kind of be up in this region. So what I do to help prevent some of the string noise, because I'm not perfect at this technique, it's probably one of my weaker techniques if I'm going to be honest with you guys, which I always am. What I will do though is I'll use my palm to mute some of the notes in between. Okay, so I've got my palm right here. And that just helps cut down, again, on the string noise there. And with the hand being in this position, it just makes things a little bit easier. That's just the way I do it. Again, there's not really a right or wrong way. There's only the way that works for you, okay? That's just one of many ways. So after we do that part, I kind of continue the lick going back the other way. No more sweep picking involved here, but I'm doing some finger tapping, some hammer-ons and pull-offs. So let me just kind of go through this again. What I'm doing after we do that sweep part, I go back over to the B string. It's a very quick and snappy little procedure there. And what I'm doing is I'm on the B string, the 12th fret, and we're just playing three notes to simplify things. I'm just kind of doing the hammer-on pull-off with you know the finger tapping there on 12, 15, and 17. So essentially the same notes that we're playing on the E string. Now we're going to go over to the G string. So I come back to the G string, just a little tap here on three notes, 12, 14, and what are we on? 14 and 16, okay, 12, 14, 16. And then I'll do some more hammer-ons and pull-off back up to the 10th and the 9th fret, okay? Something like this. Okay, and then we end on that 7th fret. So I played that several times there. Again, it's kind of difficult to play that slow. Of course, my Patreon members, you guys have the actual tabs for this thing. I really would rather you just hear this and pick out what you think it is. Like, what if you did something different? And we're about to move on to the next part here, don't worry. But what if you did something different? What if you just did that? What if you ended instead of the... You might find that more appealing. It's like, okay, Jason, you're playing maybe too many notes than what I want to hear, right? You might find that a little bit more appealing by just, having a bend there. Or you might skip that last part altogether. You might do something like this. You may do something like that, okay? And that was just a little bit more simple. Okay, again, we're just using three notes to simplify things. We're just using three notes here and just kind of moving around. That's the pattern you might recognize when we're doing stuff like this. A lot of times you can break solos down, the fast parts down, into just three simple notes. You can bite it three notes at a time and just go over that. The third part of the solo is much less confusing. That sounds similar to what we played in the first part of the solo, right? The only difference is, and basically all we're doing, we just move that up an octave. And I love that, by the way. I love when solos do that. When you play something here, then you play the same thing again somewhere else. It just gives you a different texture to the solo. It kind of tells a different part of the story while taking you back to this place. Kind of reminds you of a place that you visited before, right? The first part of the solo is this. we did something, you know, whatever we did in part 2 just now, and then we came back to that, like a really cool memory, but we did something different with it. I think of guitar solos as a story, and you guys, you know that we've talked about that before. So basically the same thing. I'm moving up another note here, but we are on the D string here on frets 9, then 10, then we go to the G string. I'm going to slide from 12 to 14, and then we'll end on 12, okay? And then we've got a little whammy action there as well. Now this fourth and final part of the guitar solo is a little bit faster, but actually it's very simple. I'll explain it, but let me just play it for you real quick. Remember I said something about 3 notes? You can usually break a solo down into 3 note sections. Well, that's basically all we did here. So we're on the A string and we're playing frets 14, 15, and 17. We're going to play that. We're going to do the exact same thing over on the D string. Then we're going to move over to the G string, and instead of the 14, 15, 17, we're going to play 14, 16, 17. Then we're going to go back because we're going up a little bit higher after that. So we're going to go 16, 17, and 19, and then we're going to bend that. So literally this is all it is. Now you may notice I'm using my 3rd finger for that last note on each of those 3 note patterns there. Again, these 3 note patterns are really cool because they allow you to play really fast, and when you break it down just 3 notes, well, it just simplifies the entire piece of music there. I do encourage you to use your pinky finger as much as possible. It's just that these notes are so close together down here, so a lot of times I might just use my 3rd finger instead. But either way is fine. And I do want you to practice using your pinky as much as possible. Don't neglect it, you know, because you don't want that to be your weakest link. One more thing I want to point out here. Sometimes when you're playing these little 3 note patterns really fast, you might speed it up a little bit more. One thing that I'll do is I might repeat the 3 note pattern. So listen to this. And that time I used my pinky finger. Who knows? But what I want you to get here is I went a little bit faster on the notes, and you'll notice that I played that second 3 note pattern twice. So instead of this, I did this. I played this part twice. And again, that's just a neat little strategy you can use. If you feel like you're playing these notes, this pattern here, you're like, you know, I might be playing it a little faster than what I saw Jason play it, or this guitar player, or whatever. Well, hey, just sneak in a double on one of those 3 note patterns there, and it just kind of helps keep things smooth. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. It is time for our guitar chat, guys, but real quick, if you do not have my free practice guide called Metal Riffs and Licks, download a copy of that. There's a link in the description of this video. If you already have my guide, then check out my online guitar courses. If you're just starting out, I've got Metal Guitar Apprentice that's perfect for beginners, or if you need to revisit the fundamentals of heavy metal guitar, or if you're beyond that level, then check out my course called Metal Riff Master. Links for all that good stuff is in the description of this video. The thing about guitar solos is I feel like a guitar solo is very personal. Okay, I feel like that this is something that guitar player wrote, and even if you learn to play a guitar solo note for note, and that's fine, I don't discourage that at all, but even if you learn that guitar solo, let's say it's Marty Friedman solo, or this person's solo, Joe Satriani or Malmsteen, hey, that's fine, learn the solos, but you got to remember, it's not your solo. Somebody else wrote that, and this is why, and again, there's nothing wrong with learning solos, guys. Learn them note for note if you want to do that, but this is why I strongly encourage you to focus more on developing your own style and sound. Okay, yeah, you do that by learning other stuff, I get that, but as soon as you pick apart those notes or learn the concepts of what the guitar player is doing, I want you to quickly shift gears into writing mode. What can you come up with? Okay, well, Jason did this over here, or this person did this over here, but what if I do this instead? I want you guys to start thinking that way when you pick up your guitar. Even with rhythms, right? You're playing this rhythm, you guys caught my 2 rhythm lessons on this part of this lesson here. And by the way, I'll put those 2 lessons, I'll put those links in the description of this video. They'll be at the top part there in the description. But even with the rhythms, learning the rhythms, I want you to quickly think, how can I make this mine? What else can I do with it? Maybe play the lick or the riff on a different place on the fretboard. Maybe play in a different key. Maybe do something completely different. I want you to start adding things to it or even taking things away from it. We talked about that. I think it was in I forget what part, but somewhere in the solo that we just learned, there's one part where like, what if you changed it? What if you just didn't do all the notes, play all the notes I played and did this instead? I think it's part 2. So try that, guys. I really want you to put your heart and soul into this. Don't get to the point where you're frustrated because you can't quite figure out all the little nuances that this guitar player is doing or that one's doing, because that's their style, that's their way of playing. Focus more on developing your own style. That's when your true musicianship starts to come out. Look, you can learn all the songs you want, but they're not your songs. Somebody else wrote that, guys. So go from that to writing your own stuff, because I'm telling you this right now, you can take the solo that I played and you can come up with something that sounds better to you, because you're going to integrate your own style, your own feeling. And guys, no one can do exactly what you do exactly the way you do it. You are something that cannot be replicated. I shouldn't call you something. You're someone. You're not a thing. You're a person, right? You are someone. Your style, the way you approach everything. Guys, that can't be replicated. Sure, you might be able to play the notes, or somebody might be able to learn your solo and they might be able to pick out the notes or whatever, but the way you approach it, every little detail that you put into it, because it's you, it's your style, guys, that can't be replicated. So this is why I harp on this on almost like every video. You guys probably like, Jason, you sound like a broken record 2 times in a row, man. But I think it's important, guys. I really encourage you to develop your own style, because I know you have it in you to do that, okay? So focus on that. Yeah, learn this stuff, but develop your own style as well. See where you can go with this stuff. I've got a little clip I want you to hear, because there's one more part to this series. Again, we've got the rhythms. I'll put those in the description here, but there's one more part. So listen for the last short little solo that I do, and that's going to be on the next lesson. So check it out right here. Again, guys, that last little solo you heard, that is going to be on the next lesson. It's a little bit shorter, so I think the shorter solos are a little bit better to learn. And I'll probably, future lead lessons I do on here, I'll probably shorten them up. This was kind of lengthy, so I'll probably shorten them up into more bite-sized chunks. And let me know if you guys agree with that. If you're okay with that, just drop a comment below. And hey, if this video helped you guys, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Also, don't forget to check out the links in the description. I'll see you guys on the next video. Until then, keep it metal.